Have you ever heard the theory that humanity's origins trace back to the African continent? At first glance, this idea might raise some questions. Could a land with such a vast, harsh desert really cradle the beginnings of mankind? When I first heard it, my mind was flooded with questions. Africa, with over a third of its land covered by desert, seems an unlikely birthplace of human civilization. Yet we cannot deny that this continent witnessed the rise of an extraordinary civilization, ancient Egypt. However, according to the latest research, ancient Egypt may have only been a small fragment of a much older and advanced civilization. Hidden beneath the scorching sands of the Sahara Desert might lie a technologically advanced culture beyond our imagination. Over 10,000 years ago, the Sahara wasn't a desert, but a thriving, vibrant land. Until one fateful day, an unimaginable catastrophe struck, quickly burying all evidence of this flourishing civilization. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. The Sahara today holds more than just one unsolved mystery, like the towering pyramids. The famous Eye of the Sahara, a symbol that has puzzled researchers for decades, is located here as well. So, is there a hidden story linking humanity's origins, the Eye of the Sahara, and these ancient pyramids? Today, join World Mysteries as we dive into one of the places that may hold the key to unlocking the secrets of human origin: the mysteries of the Sahara Desert. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our exciting explorations into the world's greatest mysteries. When you think of Africa, what comes to mind? Wild animals? Rainforests? Or maybe the blistering heat? Africa, located in the Eastern Hemisphere, is the second largest continent on Earth. But this massive landmass is also home to the world's largest desert, the Sahara. And this title is the largest isn't just for show. According to research, the Sahara Desert covers over 9.4 million square kilometers, equivalent to the entire land area of the United States. In the past, we may have thought of the Sahara as a barren, lifeless desert, but it's hard to believe now that this very place once held an abundance of water. In 2010, geologists discovered the fossilized remains of a fish in the western Sahara near the Nile River. This discovery shocked experts. It meant that this arid land had once held abundant water resources. Immediately, satellites were deployed to study the region, and soon after, astonishing data emerged. Evidence showed that not only the western Nile region but the entire Sahara once had plentiful water sources. In fact, it even contained one of the largest lakes in the world, the ancient Lake Mega Chad. Over 6,000 years ago, this lake spanned up to 388,500 square kilometers, larger than the entire country of Vietnam. Imagine that. A lake larger than Vietnam itself, practically an inland sea. But the Sahara's watery past doesn't end there. The region once held what may have been the longest river in the world. In 2015, the journal Nature Communications published a study by a team of French scholars who, through satellite investigations, discovered evidence of an ancient river. Over 11,700 years ago, this massive river, along with its many tributaries, flowed across the entire African continent. Today, the Nile River occupies part of this ancient riverbed, with the Egyptian pyramids standing nearby as silent witnesses to the past. If a single Nile River could support the rise of ancient Egyptian civilization, imagine the civilizations that could have flourished along a river that spanned an entire continent. What mysteries and lost cultures could still lie hidden beneath the Sahara's sands? Over 200 years ago, an Italian explorer named Giovanni Battista joined an expedition to Egypt. While the rest of the team focused on studying the Great Pyramid of Khufu, Giovanni stood in front of a peculiar human-headed statue and observed it silently. His intuition told him that this statue was likely not just a head, and there must be something more beneath it. Driven by curiosity and determination, he convinced the team to begin excavating around the statue. After some time, the world's largest stone sculpture gradually emerged from the sand, the Great Sphinx. Measured at 73 meters in length, 19 meters in width, and 20 meters in height, it's almost as large as a Boeing 747, carved from a single block of stone. With its massive size and mysterious form, the human-headed, lion-bodied Sphinx has long puzzled humanity as to who could have created it. However, to this day, archaeologists have not found the answer, as there are no inscriptions or writings on the statue. Even in Egyptian history, there is no record of the pharaoh who commissioned it. The only clue is found on the dream stele, placed between the statue's paws, which recounts the dream of Prince Thutmose IV over 3,400 years ago. According to legend, Thutmose IV slept beside the Sphinx, and in his dream, the statue turned into a god and told him that if he helped uncover its body, he would defeat his brothers and become the next ruler of Egypt. This means that at that time, only the head of the Sphinx was visible. Upon waking, Thutmose IV immediately ordered the excavation, and sure enough, the full lion-bodied figure was revealed. To commemorate this monumental excavation, he erected the dream stele as a witness to the event. This suggests that the Sphinx has existed for at least 3,400 years. However, strangely enough, later archaeologists based on the dream stele concluded that Pharaoh Khafra was the one who built the Sphinx, since it stands near his temple. Isn't that fascinating? It's not that they believed Thutmose IV built the statue, but rather, they chose to attribute it to Khafra, a figure who had little direct connection to it. What do you think about this? Archaeologists professionally agree that the Great Sphinx was built by Pharaoh Khafra, and as a result, its construction is dated to around 4,500 years ago. However, this theory does not convince everyone. Edgar Cayce, the great 20th-century American psychic, is often called the sleeping prophet, because he could only predict the future while in a hypnotic trance. He famously predicted the rise of Hitler, the start and end of World War II, and even the election of the 44th President of the United States, an African American. In 1910, during one of his trance sessions, Cayce found himself not traveling into the future, as usual, but instead traveling to the past. He witnessed firsthand the construction of the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. What astonished him was that the builders of these monumental structures were not ancient Egyptians but survivors of the lost continent of Atlantis. According to Cayce, around 12500 years ago, Atlantis suffered a catastrophic disaster, and a group of survivors fled to Egypt. These survivors were responsible for building the great ancient monuments that continue to amaze us today. Even more startling, Cayce claimed that beneath the Sphinx, there was a hidden chamber, an information hall, containing all the knowledge of the Atlanteans and the true cause of their demise. At the time, Cayce's words were met with skepticism, as most people could not believe that a civilization over 10,000 years ago could have constructed such immense structures. However, over 40 years later, a French archaeologist named Schwaller became the first to discover evidence that the Sphinx had been buried by a great flood. Later, two other scholars, John Anthony West and Robert Milton Schock, also supported the idea that the Sphinx had indeed been buried by a massive flood. The key point is that the most recent flood capable of burying the Sphinx would have occurred at least 10,000 years ago, which aligns closely with Cayce's predictions. If the Sphinx was truly built over 10,000 years ago, who could have been its builders? Could it have been the Atlanteans, as Cayce suggested? According to the writings of Plato, over 10,000 years ago, there existed a unique civilization called Atlantis, a mighty kingdom like no other in the world. They emerged from an ancient era at an unimaginable speed, becoming the most powerful kingdom on Earth. Even ancient Egypt at the time had to submit to the rule of this civilization. The story begins with a mysterious island, as Plato described it long ago. This island was located opposite the two promontories of the Pillars of Hercules. On this island, ordinary people lived, until one day, the sea god Poseidon happened to meet a beautiful girl. They quickly fell in love, and not long after, the girl gave birth to 10 sons for Poseidon. These children were a combination of gods and humans, which is why they all possessed extraordinary abilities. To provide a home for his wife and 10 sons, Poseidon built an independent city at the center of the island. The city was designed with alternating land and water, with concentric rings surrounding a central area. The northern side of the city was bordered by mountains, while the southern side faced the sea. After the city was completed, Poseidon appointed his eldest son, Atlas, as the king. Hence, the country was named after its king, Atlantis. In Plato's description, Atlantis was a city built in concentric circles, with the palace of King Atlas located at the very center of the island. It is said that this palace was constructed with an extraordinary style, with walls covered in gold, while the outer walls were plated with a mysterious metal called orichalcum. Every night, orichalcum emitted a red light, illuminating the entire city of Atlantis. In addition to the palace, there was also a temple dedicated to the sea god Poseidon at the center of the island. Every 5 years, Poseidon's 10 sons would gather at the temple to report to the god about the state of the world. Moving outward from the center of the island, the next areas were where the other 9 sons of King Atlas lived, in the aristocratic district. The third level was reserved for the officials who served the gods, whose main duty was to serve the gods and manage the human world on their behalf. The outermost level was where the common people lived. Despite living on the outermost level, records indicate that even the common citizens of Atlantis enjoyed a life of great wealth. In Atlantis, the climate was always like spring, with an abundance of food, beautiful clothing, and streets decorated with gold. These descriptions might seem too fantastic for many to believe, but if you think of modern-day Dubai, it may not seem too difficult to imagine. Besides the unimaginable wealth, the outer level of the city also housed a port capable of docking 1,200 ships. Among these ships, some were international trade vessels, but the majority were warships of Atlantis. It turns out that Atlantis was not satisfied with just a life of wealth. They were also ambitious to become the rulers of the world. And so, they began their conquests of other lands. Over 11,000 years ago, the people of Athens, who had long endured oppression, finally decided to rise up in rebellion. However, just as war was about to break out, a series of catastrophic disasters struck, causing Atlantis to vanish from the world's map. Despite Atlantis's disappearance, humanity's curiosity about this mysterious civilization has never ceased. One of the major reasons for this ongoing fascination is that the existence of Atlantis was not only described by Plato. Even Herodotus, the father of history, made detailed records of its existence in his book History. In fact, he even created a map that marked the specific location of Atlantis. According to Herodotus, Atlantis was located to the northwest of present-day Africa. What makes this map so important is that it not only pinpointed the location of Atlantis, but also marked an ancient river in Africa that, in 2015, was rediscovered by archaeologists using satellite imagery. This discovery raises a compelling question. If Herodotus, over 2,400 years ago, could accurately mark an ancient river, could the location of Atlantis on his map also be correct? Even more astonishing, a mysterious concentric circle, thought to be a significant clue, was found at the exact location he had marked. Could it be that Atlantis, which was believed to be nothing more than a myth, truly existed, and that this ancient map was the key to uncovering its secrets? In 1965, the spacecraft, Gemini 4 inches successfully launched into space. The primary mission of the flight was to orbit the Earth. However, when the spacecraft passed over the western part of Africa, an astronaut discovered a remarkable image, an eye. Surprised, the astronaut immediately took a photo of it. Initially, NASA experts assumed that this could be the result of a meteor impact or the aftermath of a volcanic eruption. However, not long after, both of these explanations were dismissed. A meteor impact would have left more obvious traces, and if it were a volcanic eruption, not only was there no sign of a volcanic crater, but even the volcanic material left behind was also missing. Ultimately, scholars could not provide any other plausible explanations and concluded that it was a natural geographical formation. However, they were still unable to determine the exact cause of this phenomenon. The photo, initially intriguing, was set aside for a time, as information at that time was not as advanced as it is today. It wasn't until the early 2000s that some scholars in the field of mysticism suddenly noticed that the geographical feature, known as the Eye of the Sahara, closely resembled the description of Atlantis mentioned by Plato. They suggested that it could potentially be the remnants of the legendary lost civilization of Atlantis, which vanished thousands of years ago. The question of whether Atlantis truly existed or not continues to spark curiosity and debate in the academic world. According to Plato's records, Atlantis should have several key characteristics. First, Atlantis was built in concentric circles, and the Eye of the Sahara clearly matches this description. Second, Plato mentions that the entire diameter of Atlantis was 127 stadia. The stadion is an ancient Greek unit of measurement, where one stadion equals 185.4 meters today. So, 127 stadia equals 23.55 kilometers, which coincidentally matches the diameter of the Eye of the Sahara, which is also approximately 23.5 kilometers. The third clue Plato mentions is that to the north of Atlantis, there were mountains, and to the south, the sea. The fact that the Sahara's geographical feature shows signs of mountainous terrain to the north aligns with this. The final point, the sea to the south, continues to be a subject of debate among scientists. Some argue that the geographical feature shows signs of water erosion, while others believe that if there was indeed once water here, there should be other evidence, such as underwater fossils. Unfortunately, no such fossil evidence was discovered at that time, and this point was left unresolved. However, in 2019, an American scientific team, after more than 20 years of research, demonstrated that 10 million years ago, there was indeed an ancient sea route that passed through the Sahara Desert in West Africa. The research team, led by Professor Maureen O'Leary, even uncovered fossils of extinct marine life in the area. This discovery supports the theory that there was once a sea in the Sahara region. If this is true, it means the history of humanity might need to be rewritten. The discovery of marine life has led more and more people to believe that the Eye of the Sahara is actually Atlantis. However, if this is truly Atlantis, the issue becomes much more complicated. According to Professor Maureen, this ancient sea route has existed for over 50 million years, while Plato mentioned that the southern part of Atlantis was a sea. So, could it mean that Atlantis existed 50 million years ago? Based on these clues, I can't help but wonder if Atlantis truly existed. Perhaps it once lay above the Eye of the Sahara. They ruled the Earth millions of years ago, until an unknown catastrophe struck, and the few survivors fled in all directions. Some went to the Maya, others to Egypt. Archaeologists point out that these two civilizations appeared almost simultaneously. Think about it. These civilizations were separated by seas and continents, yet they emerged nearly at the same time. What are the odds of that happening, unless they came from the same place? If you look closely, you'll notice that these two civilizations have striking similarities, both in the way they built pyramids and their intended use. This is very strange, because both the Maya and Egyptian civilizations had developed writing systems, so why didn't they leave any records? Could it be that someone intentionally hid this information? Or is the answer to this mystery buried beneath the Sahara Desert? One thing we can be certain of is that beneath this vast desert, there are undoubtedly many more astonishing secrets waiting to be uncovered. So, what do you think? Could Atlantis have actually existed? Did the Atlanteans build the monumental structures of Egypt? And might there be a hidden chamber beneath the Sphinx containing records of Atlantis? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's discuss together. That's it for today's exploration. If you found this video interesting and informative, don't forget to share it with your friends and hit the subscribe button so you won't miss more mysterious stories. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video.